Hey guys, welcome back to Star Wars Timeline. My name is Ben. Today we're going to talk about episode 6 of the Book of Boba Fett, From the Desert Comes a Stranger. Two things. Number one, this is a full spoiler on review. If you didn't catch the episode yet, please don't watch this video as I'll be talking about the plot, the characters, and so forth. Go catch the episode. I would love to hear your comments in the video section below and get to understand how you guys interpreted, what you thought about different characters in this episode, and how do you feel about the show in general. And number two, I gotta say, I feel pretty conflicted after this and actually the previous episode 5 because the content of both episodes is undeniable. But how I feel about them makes me feel conflicted, and I promise you, by the end of this video, I will resolve this conflict, okay? Because, look, there's two avenues you could go. You could either criticize something all day, or you could embrace something and say, okay, accept it for what it is. And this is the route I'm going to pick after I review this particular episode. Without further ado, let's jump into it. We are back with Cobb Vanth on Tatooine, the Marshal from the Mandalorian show. And he's dealing with the Pikes. They're obviously transferring spice, and he says, look, this is my territory. Do you see the marks here on my belt? Here's the patch. I oversee these territories. Immediately, I loved this segment. This first episode brought us back that feeling of the frontier world of Tatooine. This is like a gunslinger's Wild West. And I really enjoyed that little small town in The Mandalorian, and I really enjoy here because for me, it connects the dots between the original trilogy and modern day Star Wars in the best possible way. When we see Tatooine from the perspective of the prequels, I never embraced that idea that, you know, there's like slave trade going on there and Hutt's overseeing and everything, and the pod racing scene. It just felt a little bit too different for me. You get what I'm trying to understand? I'm not judging the quality of it. It just felt quite different. This version of the Mando verse of the Tatooine felt quite right. And obviously the Marshal portrayed by Timothy Olyphant, he's awesome. I really enjoy the actor, and he sells that cowboy Wild West kind of feel very well. He's a very good actor. So the casting over there was on point in Mandalorian. I'm glad to see that this actor is back. And he first tries to warn the Pikes. We know they're making moves now. They're advancing on the territories. They're going to try to take over Tatooine. He warns them in the beginning. He says, look, you guys better come back where you came from. I'll consider this little offense insignificant. You could go about your business. We'll forget this day. They don't listen because they're stupid. They think they got the greater numbers. He whips out his blaster and he just shoots everybody but one. And he says, so you're the smart one. All right, you take the message back to them. I'm taking the bounty. This is my tax fee. And he spills the spice over, which tells us what kind of guy that he is. He's not doing it for himself. He's really an altruist, and he's looking after the small town. This first segment of this episode really works well for me. And of course, next we're back to Din Djarin, where he goes to see Grogu. What I really appreciate about this next part of the episode is that it doesn't beat about the bush. It's very similar to the way that we saw Ahsoka in The Mandalorian Season 2, where right from the beginning, Dave Filoni decided to focus on her story, and dedicate the rest of the episode to her. There wasn't like a great reveal, like gasp, oh my god, you know, it's Din Djarin again. It sticks to its guns. It knows the kind of story it wants to tell, and it's being bold. I appreciate that. There is like no hidden surprises, no plot twists. No, we're back to Din Djarin, and we know what his impulse is. He wants to go and see Grogu because he's missing the little guy. So he goes to this, I believe at this point, unnamed planet. I'm going to call it Yavin 4 because I will explain a little bit later what this kind of episode made me feel. Obviously, it's not Yavin 4. We don't know if it is, but I'm going to call it, for the sake of this review, Yavin 4. He arrives. Once again, he's on his Naboo starfighter. I love the ship. I love the way it sounds. I love the way it feels and looks. So rugged and unrefined. It has so much character and personality behind it, and it shows us that it's quite unfinished. Just like Din Djarin as the Mandalorian, it's a work in progress. He has a long distance to go before he becomes this fully self-asserted individual, and same as with his ship. So he lands, and who is there the first person to greet him? As audience, we're all quite anxious. Ooh, we want to see Luke, we want to see Luke. Everybody's super excited. But the one that greets him is R2-D2. And guys, I gotta tell you, something very unexpected happened right away. it hit so many nostalgic feelings very deliberately. It wasn't by accident. Man, this R2D2, he feels right. The way that he sounds, this particular sounds they depict for him, the way that he moves through the vegetation and his dome shakes a little bit, everything about him, his little antenna, it feels like the original trilogy. It feels like this episode was filmed in the 80s. I don't know what it is. R2D2 felt so different in the prequels movies. Just the way he moved, all those little different attachments that he had, that finer finish on his dome, like the paint job is pristine and clear. It just didn't feel right. And when we meet him here, I'm like, oh man, it's like I'm watching a cutscene from the Return of the Jedi, something like that. It just felt so right. It brought me home in a way, and it made me relax, and it made me feel comfortable watching it, and not so overly analytical and say, well, I'm going to tear this episode apart and analyze, scrutinize every detail. It made me feel welcome. I'm like, oh man, R2D2, I'm meeting the old friend again. And it moves into the next shot, which is very curious, very interesting. The moment that we see a little rock lift from behind like the vegetation, I'm like, okay, this is Luke already practicing. They're going to show us him teaching Grogu. And this little ant droid comes out. And then you see a whole colony of ant droids, and they're putting together this thing, which you obviously kind of know right from the beginning. This is going to be some sort of temple or school, a kind of thing that Luke is trying to reestablish. I really enjoy that because it informs us how people can live on these kind of like frontier worlds out there and have all the assistance and not the manpower to help them out. He doesn't need to bring a whole bunch of people. Just bring a colony of androids and they will build everything that you need in seconds. And you obviously, the progression of it's happening very, very quickly. And Din Djarin is like, hey, where's Grogu? Where's the Jedi? I'm here to see my little friend. And they built a little seat for him. Is like, hey, take a seat. It's gonna be a while. That was quite a cool comedic relief. I really enjoyed it. It's like, take a seat. It's gonna be a while. But they don't listen to him. They don't seem to respond to human interaction the way that R2 does. R2 obviously displays that kind of sentience. That's like, okay, I understand. I remember who you are. I'm gonna lead you through this trail and bring you to this place. That's it. My job is done. I'm turning off. I'm gonna recharge. But the droids don't listen to that extent. They're just going about their business, and this Din Djarin is left with no other choice than to just lay low for a little bit and just relax. And he meets Ahsoka, and once again, I think it was a meaningful comeback for her character because she explains to Din Djarin why she chose not to teach Grogu, that it was actually his choice. That she said, look, it's not up to me. Even though I'm not a Jedi, I still could have taught the little guy, but he made a choice himself. He decided to go with Luke, and I respect that decision. So that was a pretty important key story beat there. So her appearance was justified. And she still shares a couple of emotional things with Din Djarin, which also I thought worked quite well. The next part of this episode, obviously the scene that the internet will be talking about for years from now. We are back with a post-Return of the Jedi Luke Skywalker. This is no longer a small cameo. Those of you guys who watch my channel and you saw my discussions on the Facebook group, I wasn't a huge fan of Luke Skywalker's appearance at the end of The Mandalorian 2 because I felt that it was a plug to pacify fans who are just angry and they wanted to see more of a traditional status quo kind of Luke Skywalker, that they felt offended somehow by the Last Jedi. And he appeared just for such a small fragment of a episode just to take a Grogu and say, okay, here I am, young Luke Skywalker. Of course, we saw that hallway corridor scene, which I couldn't help but feel like it was just a cameo, just a gift to fans. And Luke's presence wasn't much of the part of the story. Because to justify my argument is the studio was, Jon Favreau was very easy to deceive all of the people working on the production team because it could have been anyone. Anyone could answer Grogu's call on Tython, and even they had Plo Koon's concept art to show that it could be some other Jedi. And Luke finding that little ship in the middle of nowhere just to arrive on time on his X-Wing, defeat all the droids and save Grogu, it felt off for me. And I didn't like how they exploit my favorite Star Wars hero in such a cheap cameo kind of manner. Even though the fight itself was cool, My only gripe with it was that the CGI, a deepfake Luke, it just diminished the scene a lot, tremendously. All that emotional component that it wanted to bring, which I understood the scene was trying to do, it just didn't land right for me. Now we are in this show, which is a couple of years after. This is the deepfake Luke version of from YouTube, the guy who designed that amazing special effect that Disney hired right away. They said, okay, this guy did a much better version than we did at the end of Mandalorian 2. Let's hire this dude. And it was sort of left no secret that we knew we're going to see Luke Skywalker once again because he's fan favorite. I got to say, guys, this version of Luke Skywalker is completely different from the way that I saw him at the end of The Mandalorian 2. He's no longer a cameo. Whether his story makes sense for a Book of Boba Fett or not, that's an entirely different argument. I'm just talking within the parameters of this episode, what it tried to accomplish and why it brought Luke Skywalker as the teacher of Grogu, as the little guy who belongs to, who's like has a relationship with Din Djarin, who in turn will be working with Boba Fett. I guess this is the chain that kind of built it, the logical chain of which and where each character belongs. Anyway, we see Luke training Grogu. This is probably one of the best de-aging techniques, visual effects we've ever seen. It's better than Grand Moff Tarkin from Rogue One. It's obviously way, way better than we saw Luke at the end of Mandalorian 2. It's almost convincing. There's still a couple of shots where you see, and not necessarily from close-up. Some close-up shots look phenomenal. They look so lifelike, it's scary. I mean, I grew up with seeing Mark Hamill young in the original trilogy. That's my entire childhood. I know every nuance of his face, every little angle, every little, like, the way that light hits his face. They sold it in many close-up shots. In other shots, it felt clearly off. The proportions of the face projected onto this actor felt different in size from the rest of it, and then the hair covering it. Anyway, 90% they got it there. I mean, I gotta applaud all the artists who worked really, really hard on de-aging Luke Skywalker. In terms of voice work, obviously it's Mark Hamill's voice, once again put through some kind of synthesizer technology to de-age it and make it sound youthful. Tremendous. What really sells the scene, it's not just the visual effect, but the emotional content of it. He's trying to show Grogu the way. He's like, Grogu, when he's trying to play around with frogs. Very cool and effective scene, once again, to alleviate some of the focus that he has to pay and like all that serious Jedi concentration. They break it a little bit with fun time, and he's like, Luke brings all those frogs from the pond. That was quite funny and really cool. And I loved that very serene place that they're in. They're sitting on the small hill. There's greenery all around. And this is why I called this planet Yavin 4. Because in the Legends books, in the Jedi Academy trilogy, Luke goes back to that very same temple that we saw in episode 4, the little pyramid that you guys see, that is actual ancient temple, which Luke converts into Jedi Academy, a Jedi Praxium. And it kind of draws a parallel from the Legends books into modern Star Wars canon, where we see this planet. And I can't help but feel this is Yavin 4. This is the way that I personally try to interpret it and internalize the imagery here, and this is what it means to me. So this made the whole episode come home to me. R2 felt right. Luke Skywalker's teachings felt right. It parallels Yoda's teaching in episode 5 and 6 when he instructs Luke. Now the roles have changed and Luke is the master here. And in a lot of the shots, they get Mark Hamill's face so right, because he emotes and there is meaning behind the words. I was like, I felt completely differently. I'm like, oh man, I'm so glad, I'm so happy to see Luke Skywalker. And I gotta say, once again, returning to the CGI effect as well, it works mostly when there is that very concentrated, intense look in his eyes, but he doesn't talk. Like, he looks Grogu and the lips don't move. And the eyes speak more than the rest of the face. Then it really, really works. Every time he speaks extensively in front of the camera, that's where you see it's an effect, because the lower part of the face. There is a lot of musculature involved. And sorry, guys, when people talk, you could tell right away that this is a CGI effect because the technology is not simply there. As much as artists are trying to replicate that look, it doesn't quite get there just yet. But I know I'm being very critical. I want to celebrate this scene. I want to say that this scene was a complete success in bringing back young Luke Skywalker. After watching this, this is almost like a sales pitch to say, hey guys, would you be down to see The Adventures of Luke Skywalker, the live action show? My response to that is, hell yes. If I wasn't convinced in The Mandalorian, here I'm 100% on board. Yes, it's a little bit, you could tell, some of it is a little bit of an effect, but the overall emotional content is there. You believe it's Luke Skywalker, and that's the most important thing. However, this particular scene, I felt like just a little bit overstays its welcome. Because Luke begins to repeat himself. It's like, concentrate, Grogu, feel the Force, concentrate, Grogu, feel the Force. Again, I'm being too nitpicky, guys. Please don't mind me. But I gotta say it. I gotta mention it. It was a sweet moment, and I would say that, okay, close it here. Don't give us enough for the scene to overstay its welcome. Make us salivate and hunger for more and say, oh man, next episode, I need to see more of Luke. I need to see another show with Luke. That's what it needs to accomplish. It was prolonged just for a little bit. And Ahsoka once again tells him why he can't see Grogu yet. And we understand why. He's there with his little Grogu present, little bundle. And she says, look, it's really hard for the kid as well. And I don't think he's ready to see you. If you're going to go there, you will disrupt his concentration. You will disrupt his teaching. Who are you doing it for? For yourself or for him? Think what is best for the child. And Din Djarin, obviously being the adult, he makes the right decision. He leaves without saying goodbye. As hard as it is for him, you could see he's standing there in the helmet, but his body language, you could tell it's not easy for Din Djarin. Once again, a key emotional moment caught right. All of that body expression, body language conveys what Din Djarin is going through. Great stuff. And we're off to the Yavin 4. We're back to Jabba's palace. Din Djarin arrives. He gets off his Naboo fight. Once again, guys, I'm loving this freaking ship. I'm going to say something blasphemous here. I enjoy the Naboo Starfighter more than I do Razor's Crest. I don't know why. It just fits right. It's compact, it's small, and it's just badassery. It's going to be involved in some major action sequences later on. I can just feel it, and it packs a punch. This is a ship built during the days of the Glorious Republic. We know it has some serious firepower. We're back at Jabba's palace, and Fennec Shand, Boba Fett, the Cyberpunk kids, Black Croissant, and the rest of them are standing there. They're making plans. They're like, look, the Pikes are going to start making moves here. We need to plan accordingly. We need to get more hands on the deck. And Din Djarin says, like, I might be able to help with that. He starts flying. He flies by the Jawas there, and they have the little Krayt dragon skull. It's like, little nods to the Mandalorian. Wait, is he going to hire Jawas to do some kind of construction? Why are they showing Jawas? Like, how can they help? No, but he's back to the town. I believe, what do they call it in this episode? Freetown. Then rename the town. And he's there to see the Marshal again, which makes total sense because Mandalorian helped him in his own show. Now he's back to calling that favor. He's like, look, it's not easy for me, but I really need your help. And we need to take over Tatooine from Pikes because, look, it's going to be bad business for everyone. Din Djarin says, like, hey, can I buy you a drink? We got to talk something out. Once again, we're back to that gunslinger Wild West feel, which I really, really adored about both Mandalorian and this show. It's the kind of Tatooine that I remember from my childhood, and we're back to this. So they're talking in the cantina. He tells them, look, I need your help. It's not easy to ask for a favor, but I really need it this time. And the Marshal says, like, okay, we're going to see what we can do about this. So I really like that camaraderie here between the two, which both men understand what needs to be done. And of course, the Marshal says, like, hey, gather everybody in town. We need to have a conversation because what I'm going to say next, it's going to affect everyone. We're going to we'll need to chip in with our manpower and help Boba Fett fight the Pikes. What happens next, guys, made me more excited than all of Luke Skywalker scenes because I have been waiting for this moment in live action Star Wars since 2008, since the Clone Wars. Here comes the stranger from the desert. The moment you see his silhouette far, far in the distance, my soul is telling me who this is. I'm like, Ben, this is freaking Cad Bane. Like, what? Are you serious? One of the best villains in Star Wars. I would say, as far as bounty hunters are involved, in terms of their story, how rich their lore is, how badass they are, I'm sorry, Boba Fett got nothing on the Cad Bane. Cad Bane goes toe to toe with Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Jedi Temple, survives, and escapes with a holocron. And you can't beat that. Cad Bane is my boy. I was waiting for him, and here comes in his full Wild West glory. He's just marching in, and I know something crazy is gonna happen. Somebody's gonna die. He's not just gonna come out there, parade in front of us, have that little swagger going on and leave. Bodies are gonna drop. He's coming in, and what I'm concerned about, I just couldn't switch off my little inner critic. I'm thinking to myself, please look right. Please look right. I waited for this moment. It's purposeful. It makes total sense because Tatooine is all about who has more muscle power. And if one syndicate is against another one, what are they going to do? They're going to hire the best gunslingers for the job. And we know that Cad Bane survives. We saw them in the Bad Batch. And we know that he's one of the best out there. It didn't feel cameo at all. It didn't feel like they're just pulling him out of nowhere. Like, by the way, guys, for those of you who enjoyed, Clone Wars show, here's Cad Bane. It makes total sense why he's there. He's here to enforce the syndicate's laws. He's like, hey, you said we can't carry spies through his territory. Who the hell are you? You shouldn't have stuck your nose in the business that doesn't concern you, kid. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, man, is the marshal going to drop? But then this other deputy comes out of the cantina, and he's making a move as well, obviously converting this entire scene into the blatant good, the bad, and the ugly confrontation at the end. For those of you guys who enjoy Westerners, who appreciate Sergio Leone's work, for those of you who know Clint Eastwood, this is Lee Von Cleef. This is the bad from that particular episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Lee Von Cleef was basically as the inspiration for Cad Bane's design. He's there. He pulls off his cape. We see the gun there. I'm like, man, I know who he's going to drop. And it's sure as hell is not going to be Cad Bane. He says, all right. Very tense moment. We have little wiggling hands here. Again, Wild West stuff, 100% here. He pulls the gun. Both the deputy and the marshal drop. No surprise there. And I'm thinking to myself, hold on a second. That's it for the marshal? Is he gone? Because we see the villagers, the town folk people come out and they gather around the body. They're trying to do something for him. Perhaps he survives. I hope so, because once again, Timothy Olyphant, I think he's an awesome actor. He really belongs in it. I would love to see a little bit more of him, honestly. I'm not ready to part with that character just yet. I would say he was one of the best things about the Mandalorian show. Just like Ahsoka, just like Mayfield portrayed by Bill Burr. I really like his character a lot as well. So we're there. Cad Bane shows us his greatness, and he just walks off gangster. And I gotta come back to the little thing I told you guys with the way that he looks. A little bit different. Because first you watch Star Wars, the live action. Then you spend years and years and years with an animated show, which is obviously very stylized. The way that they portray Cad Bane's species, it's quite different. Like the eye size, the way that they're positioned on the skull proportions. His face is obviously more elongated to, once again, portray that Lee Von Cleef, the actor's original face from that cowboy movies. But it feels right. It's the live action version of him. I really adore the fact that his cowboy outfit is not overly designed. There's not like crazy amount of belts on him or crazy little patterns that don't belong. He looks like a cowboy in a space opera. He's the type of character that is married to the background that we see there. Here is Tatooine, here is dust and sand blowing, and here is this cowboy. The two pictures work flawlessly together. Loved seeing Cad Bane. I can't wait to see more of him. I can't wait to see what happens if Black Chrysanthemum goes versus Cad Bane or even Boba Fett. Somebody needs to be schooled. Somebody needs to be educated. Boba Fett was literally in his pampers, like crawling under his daddy's feet when Cad Bane was making moves against the Jedi Temple. That's how much I love this character. That's how gangster he is, and we see it on full display in this episode. The final closing shot in this episode. This is The Lone Wolf and the Cub, the popular Japanese samurai films based on the manga of the same name, The Lone Wolf. In the United States, it was more popular as the Shogun Assassin, right? And there's famous samurai scene where he sits with his son and he says, my son, from this day forward, I will be a renegade. I'm a samurai no longer. I will become a ronin, an assassin for hire. And this will be a tough life. And I will give you a choice. Even though you're small, you can't understand. Here's a colorful ball. And here is a samurai sword. And we know that in that scene that this samurai's wife has been murdered by these assassins. So it's just him and his little boy. And he says, choose the sword and you will join me. Choose the ball and you will join your mother. Basically saying, look, as hard as it's going to be, I'm going to have to kill you because this is going to be a a dog's life that I don't want for my son. Very tough decision. And you see the little boy crawl towards the sword. He obviously starts traveling with his father. Same here. Luke Skywalker. Here's a little present from Din Djarin, the little chainmail, which a lot of fans have predicted. But I have another gift for you. And I know that prequel fans will go completely berserk. For those of you guys who grew up with the prequels, who enjoyed that version of a Yoda who jumps around with a lightsaber and we see him on full display his Jedi powers, it's Yoda's lightsaber. How Luke Skywalker comes in possession with that, how he gets it, I honestly don't care. Because that's not the purpose of this scene. The purpose is to tell him, look, here are the choices for you that you have to make. Take the sword and you will follow in my footsteps. You will become the Jedi. I will train you to be a great Jedi. Choose this little chainmail and you will return back with your adopted father. But you will forsake all the Jedi teachings that you have got and you will forsake that life of a great Jedi. And it poses a very important question. When we see Luke Skywalker's temple, which looks suspiciously like what is being built in this episode, right? We see the temple burning in a little bit of the Last Jedi. We see that scene once again in the Rise of the Skywalker, and we start wondering whether it's exactly the same temple or not. And a lot of fans ask, well, hold on a second. If Luke grabs Grogu and then Ben Solo, Kylo Ren, has an attack and he destroys the temple, how the heck does Grogu survive? Or does he survive at all? Well, there it comes to this decision. It almost makes you feel that Grogu will forsake his Jedi training and he will go with Din Djarin. It remains to be seen. There could be other possible explanations where Grogu still chooses the path of the Jedi and somehow still survives the slaughter of Kylo Ren. It remains to be seen. And here is my resolution for this episode and for this era of Star Wars in general. I was quite critical of Luke Skywalker in Mandalorian because I felt that it was a cameo that doesn't belong there and it exploits the biggest Star Wars, probably cinematic hero in this very, very casual way and saying, hey fans, here is de-aged Luke Skywalker. Here's some fun lightsaber porn scene where he runs through the hallway and kills everybody. Remember, we did the same with Darth Vader, but here's Luke Skywalker version. I wasn't a huge fan of it. I did nerd out a little bit. That looked cool. It was staged well choreographed, but I just wasn't on board with it. When I was watching this episode, once again, I'm conflicted and I'm feeling to myself, why in the hell are we watching a show called The Book of Boba Fett, and in episode 5 we spend an entire episode with Din Djarin and his quest that doesn't pertain to what Boba Fett is doing. And then episode 6 follows suit and we see more of Din Djarin, but then again, the episode tries to bring the show back home and we're back with Boba Fett a little bit and saying, oh, no, we're sort of getting back on track here. These are very mixed signals. This speaks to me like a mixed identity crisis. Like the show doesn't exactly know which way it wants to pull. It wants to have a dedicated show about Boba Fett, but then it wants to explore the characters like Luke Skywalker and Din Djarin, which are obviously popular with fans. To me, everything that the content of the story should always, the content of the show should always be in service of the story. To me, it's not effective when you start pulling characters from all over the place, jamming it all together and say, but it's cool, right? You're going to like it. That's what made me feel conflicted. But you could either stay jaded and be like, oh, this is not my Star Wars. I don't like it. See, they're ruining it again. You know, Jon Favreau, he had so much promise. He made the show that like, you know, Mandalorian, but here he's doing something I dislike. We want Ron Howard's daughter who directed episode 5. We want her to take charge and make all future Star Wars. Check this out, guys. It's a vicious cycle when fans always do that. They find something that they like. They find the people behind that, like Ron Howard's daughter, and say, well, from now on, she should be making it. Just like they did with Jon Favreau with Mandalorian show. But once again, at season 2 or season 3, something else comes out, and that director doesn't do something that is in line with their fans' particular tastes, guess what? They will throw that person under the bus. And it's never a good place for fans to be, to constantly criticize and demand of filmmakers. My understanding is, look, I'm not the biggest Jon Favreau fan, but he makes stuff that resonates with people. He makes other episodes which doesn't resonate with some, but work for others. There's a range of taste we all have as fans, and there is a range of things that are doing that are successful. So I saw this episode and I told myself, Ben, well, hold on a second. This may not necessarily connect well with the Book of Boba Fett, but was it good content? Hell yes, it was. It was an awesome episode. Was episode 5 much of a Book of Boba Fett show? No, it was Mandalorian 3.0. Everybody on the internet is saying that. So what's the choice here? Do I take the little Yoda lightsaber or do I take the chainmail? Guys, I take the lightsaber. I take the good side. This is good freaking stuff. Yes, the Mandalorian show was a little bit wonky for me. Even the Book of Boba Fett, it's a little messy. It's a little bit uneven. But it's fun. It's entertaining. It's not going to win any Oscars for me. It's not the most tremendous, mind-blowing thing. It's enjoyable. That's the most important thing I want to stress, guys, here. It's fun. It's entertaining. You can take the bits that you enjoy and say, I like them. And you can leave the things that you dislike behind. Like, I didn't like Luke Skywalker at the end of The Mandalorian 2. Big freaking deal. I bet you go on the internet and you create any poll on any Facebook group, people will predominantly say, we loved that comeback of Luke Skywalker. This made us feel right. You know, this was like a return. We didn't like the Last Jedi version of Luke. This is the right treatment of the character for us. This is what's important. I liked my The Last Jedi Luke version, but I also like this. Pick and choose what you enjoy. Concentrate on the positives. Don't be like some of these fans who are, oh, you see, they did Luke Skywalker right here. And then you use something that you enjoy to shit on something else and say, that's how Luke Skywalker should have been in The Last Jedi. See, Rian Johnson. Dude, you're missing the message. You guys are diluting things. Focus on what you like. This is exactly what I'm doing with this episode. It's not entirely 100% what I expected to see, but it works. It's well done. It's well crafted. It's good material. It makes me hopeful as a fan that they will learn from this experience. And Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, Ron Howard, his daughter, regardless of who directs it, next time they're encouraged to do better. Because we as fandom lift them up and we say, oh, we really like what you do here. This was a little bit off. This was a little bit funny and goofy, but whatever, you know, you tried here. We focus on things which make Star Wars great. Anyway, maybe I sound like I'm preaching, but guys, at the end of the day, seeing this version of Luke Skywalker was very heartfelt. It was emotional. And seeing R2-D2 in that very specific manner just brought me home, made me feel like I'm watching good old Star Wars again. That feels special to me. Anyway, guys, thanks a lot for staying with me. Thanks a lot for 2,000 members joining my YouTube channel. I really, really appreciate all of your support, all the kind words, and all the constructive critique that you give me. And I'll see you guys next week with the final review of this episode, and then we'll get to discuss the entire show, see how the first season of the Book of Boba Fett has fared. I'll see you guys next week. Take care.